A Newberg teacher's aide, suspended by the school district, speaks out tonight about why she wore blackface into the school building.
She calls it a protest. Katu News has obtained video, which we received from a freelance photographer who spoke with Lauren Pefferle, who says she is the teacher in question, the teacher's aide in question. The freelancer did the interview, and we have an excerpt for you. Now, in her own words, this is her explanation for coming to the school in blackface.
Other unvaccinated staff were being told by the Newberg School District administration leads that we could not work with students unless we were 6 feet apart, starting right away, starting Thursday afternoon. And so I was on my way to lunch. I took my lunch and I processed this, and I was thinking that this is segregation. So on Friday, September 17th, I showed up to school and I put on some dark makeup on the parts that were showing my skin, including my hands. And I came in hopes to represent Rosa Parks, who I admire for standing up during her time when segregation was taking place. And I felt like I and others who are unvaccinated were starting to experience segregation.
Lauren Pefferle confirmed to us by phone that she is indeed the person who appears in the video. We asked the school district for confirmation of Lauren Pefferle's name and employment, and it declined. We reached out to a number of teachers from Mabel Rush Elementary, where the incident happened. One teacher confirmed to us that Pefferle is the teacher in the center of the controversy.
Steve and Deb, 50 people were slated to speak tonight in this virtual meeting. Most people talked about the ban on political flags and banners recently passed by the board, widely seen as a rule targeting Pride and Black Lives Matter displays. But the shadow of what else has happened loomed over the meeting as well.
Controversy has gripped the Newberg School District for weeks now. First, a battle over Pride and Black Lives Matter flags and banners. In response, a divided school board voted to ban all political displays, with the exception of the American and Oregon flags. Then, racist incidents occurred. One student was part of a Snapchat group titled Slave Trade. Then a staff member showed up in blackface. It all loomed large over a school board meeting centered on public comment. Most people had the flag issue on their minds.
A board telling me what I can and cannot put on my walls is limiting the ways I connect with students and tell them what, and telling them that I see them.
I also want to say that I'm really tired of hearing 4 of our school board members disparaged as racist, homophobic, hateful, uncaring. I have simply had it.
This board claims to desire to get back to education while simultaneously demonstrating how incredibly uneducated the board is on racial, sexual, and gender identities and experiences in the United States.
I'm alarmed by the fringe movement to hang flags like Black Lives Matter and the gay pride flags in our schools, which are logos for incorporated political nonprofits.
Now, the board did not take any action tonight. This was simply a listening session. Their next board meeting is on September 28th. They are still vowing to work further on that policy covering political and controversial flags and symbols.
Well, yes, Steve, Commissioner Hardesty made it clear that accepting this report does not mean that the city will be accepting any new policies, but it is an important step in keeping city officials accountable.
The overall, feedback that we got from the community was that at the very beginning of these protests, this was a global showing of solidarity, that people were coming and protesting in a really, peaceful and joyous way, and were immediately met with a confrontational looking armor.
Clearly, what we saw on the streets wasn't always peaceful. Candace Avalos, the chair of the Citizen Review Committee, took questions from commissioners about the recent report. Some of the recommendations include permanently banning CS gas and other chemical weapons used during crowd management. Have officers wear soft clothes instead of riot gear, which many in the survey say escalates a crowd. They also want police to facilitate the crowd's movement instead of lining up in what could be perceived as a provocative stance. Mayor Wheeler addressed some of these concerns, saying that the Bureau is already requiring de-escalation and implicit bias training. And while many still can't agree on what a fully staffed police bureau looks like,
there's no disagreement that we need to hire the right people and we need to train them well and make sure that they have the resources, the tools, and the training to be effective in their job and address some of the fundamental issues that you've mentioned.
now, the report did not include the demographics of those citizens, something that Commissioner Ryan brought up, but then Commissioner Hardesty says it was important to conceal those respondents' identities in those surveys.
Exactly, Lincoln. We walked around Pioneer Courthouse Square this afternoon to talk with Portlanders and ask them what they think has changed over the past 6 years since Portland officially declared the homeless crisis an emergency. And for the most part, people here are just disappointed.
We have a crisis. We have a crisis both in continued unsheltered homelessness and in rapidly eroding housing affordability.
Then Mayor Charlie Hales made this declaration 6 years ago to the day, saying the homeless crisis had escalated to an emergency.
I don't think that we can solve all of Portland's homelessness or housing problems overnight.
Not overnight, and not even over several years.
Do you think the city has made any progress in handling that emergency?
It doesn't look like it. You'll be walking down the streets and people are doing heroin.
Some say drugs are to blame, others finances.
I know it's difficult to find funding for this crisis right now, but it should have happened like 6 years ago.
To many, the problem has clearly worsened, but others acknowledge the magnitude of the crisis facing city leaders.
And I think they're doing the best that they can against a problem that's nearly insurmountable.
Commissioner Mingus Mapp says his council is being innovative, searching for solutions.
Commissioner Dan Ryan is actually doing some really historic and heroic work around standing up 6 new safe rest villages around the city.
But is that enough? Not to all.
How do we recover from this and how do we emerge from this emergency?
I think that answer lies with the people that seem to be neglected, and that would be like the individuals who are living on the streets.
As many know, during the start of the pandemic, the city completely stopped clearing homeless camps. Even people I talked with here today mentioned that the city struggled to get a handle on the homeless problem, especially during the pandemic. Commissioner Mapp says that's probably a moment the city went too far, saying no one can look at where Portland is today and say that that was a successful policy.